Pick up a plastic storage bin, a Rubbermaid container, something you've had in your kitchen for years, flip it over and look at the base, run your hand along the bottom. There's a decent chance it's not perfectly flat. And here's the thing most people never find out. That's not a defect. The engineers who designed the mold that made that part knew it was going to warp. They planned for it. The mold itself was built slightly wrong on purpose so that when the plastic came out and cooled down, it would end up exactly right. That process is called mold compensation, and it's one of the stranger, more counterintuitive problems in all of manufacturing. Let me explain what's actually happening inside one of these machines because it's weirder than you'd expect. The process that makes most consumer plastic products is called injection molding. You take plastic resin, tiny pellets, they look like fish food, heat them up to somewhere between 400 and 500 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on the material, and inject that molten plastic under extremely high pressure into a steel mold. The mold itself is kept relatively cool, usually around 100 to 140 degrees, so the plastic solidifies quickly. You open the mold, pop out the part, and in theory, you've got your product. Straightforward enough, right? The problem is that plastic shrinks as it cools. Every thermoplastic does this, and the amount varies quite a bit depending on what you're working with. Polyethylene, the material in milk jugs and plastic bags, can shrink anywhere from 1.5 to 3.5%, depending on how it's processed. Polypropylene, which shows up in those Rubbermaid bins, and in a massive percentage of automotive parts, typically shrinks between 1 and 2.5%. Acrylonitrile butadienestyrene, ABS plastic, the kind used in Lego bricks and most consumer electronics housings, shrinks considerably less, around 0.4 to 0.8%. And nylon, which is a polyamide, can swing even wider than polyethylene if there's moisture involved, because nylon actually absorbs water from the air after it comes out of the mold and expands slightly as it does. The engineers have to model that behavior too before they ever cut steel. So if you know a material shrinks 2%, can't you just make the mold 2% bigger in every direction and call it done? Like for a simple, thick-walled part with uniform geometry, that actually works pretty well. But most plastic products are not simple uniform shapes. They have ribs, bosses, thin walls, thick sections, holes, curves, and this is where it gets genuinely complicated. Plastic doesn't cool evenly. The thicker sections of a part cool slower than the thin ones. The area near the gate, that's the entry point where molten plastic flows into the mold cavity, is hotter and experiences different pressure than the far ends of the tool. The direction the plastic flows as it fills the mold affects the orientation of the polymer chains, which then affects how much shrinkage happens along different axes. A part can shrink significantly more along the flow direction than across it, sometimes by a factor of 2 or 3 to 1, depending on the material. This is why a rectangular plastic lid, if you're not careful about the mold design, will come out looking like a potato chip. The corners curl up, the center sags, and what was supposed to be flat is now a warped, twisted mess. In the industry, this is just called warpage, and correcting it is a significant part of what injection mold engineers spend their careers figuring out. The field that tries to predict all of this before you ever spend money on steel is called mold flow analysis, and it sits squarely within what engineers call computer-aided engineering, or CAE. The simulation software that changed this industry is called Autodesk Moldflow. It started as a standalone company called Moldflow Pty. Founded in Melbourne, Australia back in 1978 by a man named Colin Austin. Autodesk acquired it decades later, and it's now the industry standard for this kind of simulation work. There are strong competitors. Moldex3D, which comes out of Taiwan, is genuinely excellent and widely used in Asian manufacturing, and Sigmasoft out of Germany has a strong following in European tooling shops. But Autodesk Moldflow is the name that comes up first in most North American and global automotive programs. What these programs actually do is remarkable when you think about it. You import your 3D part model, assign a material from a database containing the thermal and flow properties of thousands of commercial resins. define your gate locations and cooling channel layout, and run the simulation. The software models how the molten plastic fills the cavity, where it freezes first, how pressure distributes across the part, and critically, how the part will shrink and distort as it cools. This is computer-aided engineering applied at the molecular level of a material's behavior. The output includes what's called a warpage map. It's a color-coded visualization showing which areas of your part will deflect and by how much. Blue regions barely move. Red regions deflect significantly. On a complex part, you might see deflections ranging from essentially 0 to several millimeters across a component that's only 12 inches wide. And when you first see one of these maps, your instinct is usually something like, okay, we have a problem. Once you have that warpage prediction, you have options. You can change the part geometry to reduce the distortion, add ribs in specific locations, adjust wall thicknesses, move the gate. You can modify the processing conditions, mold temperature, injection speed, hold pressure, cooling time, or you can compensate the mold geometry directly. Mold compensation is where things get philosophically strange in an industrial sort of way. If the simulation predicts that the center of a flat panel will sink by 0.8 millimeters after it cools, you build the mold with the center raised 0.8 millimeters. If the corners are predicted to curl up by 1.2 millimeters, you recess those areas in the mold by 1.2 millimeters. The mold surface becomes the mirror image of the predicted error. When the plastic comes out and distorts exactly the way the CAE model said it would, it ends up where you actually wanted it. You're building in the opposite of the mistake before the mistake happens. If you put a compensated mold on a surface plate and measured it without context, it would look wrong. Intentionally, deliberately wrong. Modern CNC machining makes this practical in a way it simply wasn't 30 years ago. The compensated geometry goes directly from the simulation output into the CNC machining software, and the mold surface is cut not to the nominal part shape, but to a mathematically warped version of it. That's the version that produces the correct part. Back in the 1980s and into the 1990s, most of this was experience-based. You built the mold, ran the plastic, measured what came out, and corrected by grinding steel away or adding material through welding, a process the industry calls steel-safe machining, where you deliberately leave extra material in areas you expect to need adjustment. It was slow, expensive, and required a lot of intuition built up over years. A single injection mold can cost anywhere from $25,000 for a simple consumer product tool, up to $500,000 or more for a complex multi-cavity automotive tool. Making significant mistakes on that steel is not something anyone can afford to do casually. The automotive industry pushed this science forward, probably more than any other sector. GE's plastics division, which became SABIC in 2007 after Saudi Basic Industries Corporation acquired it from General Electric, spent years in the 1990s developing what they internally called virtual molding processes for large structural plastic components. Front-end modules, instrument panel carriers, bumper fascias made from thermoplastic polyolefin blends. These are parts where dimensional control is genuinely critical because they have to fit against metal stampings on assembly lines, and gaps in panel flushness are things car buyers notice immediately on a showroom floor, even if they couldn't articulate exactly why something looks off. The tolerances on a car bumper fascia are remarkable given the material involved. You have a part that might be 60 inches wide, made of a thermoplastic polyolefin blend that has to survive impacts and UV exposure and temperature swings from -40 to over 180 degrees Fahrenheit, and the engineers are trying to hold certain critical dimensions to within a millimeter across that entire span. That requires getting the mold compensation right, but it also requires very tight control of the actual molding process because the CAE simulation only predicts warpage based on the conditions you feed it. If the production press runs slightly hotter or cooler than the model assumed, or if cooling water flow rate varies, the part will behave differently than predicted. This is why high-volume automotive and appliance molders run statistical process control on their injection presses. They're monitoring cavity pressure, melt temperature, cooling time, and dozens of other process variables on every single shot, sometimes producing one part every 30 to 45 seconds, 24 hours a day. Statistical process control means tracking all of that data continuously against established control limits, so that if any variable drifts outside acceptable range, the press flags it immediately. Parts made during a drift window get set aside for dimensional inspection rather than automatically feeding into the assembly line. It sounds like overkill until you're the one responsible for a dimensional escape that shuts down a vehicle assembly plant. There's another related problem worth mentioning because it shows up on so many consumer products, and most people walk right past it without knowing what they're looking at. Sink marks. Those slight surface depressions you sometimes see on injection molded parts, usually on the opposite face from a rib or a structural boss. When a rib cools and contracts, if the wall behind the rib is too thick relative to the rib geometry, that contraction pulls the surface inward slightly. You get a small dimple. On parts that will be painted, like automotive door panels, sink marks are typically accepted up to a certain depth because paint and surface texture conceal them. But on a glossy consumer electronics housing, where the outer surface is the finished surface, sink marks are extremely difficult to hide. This is a major reason why the inside of a laptop lid or a smartphone housing has such an elaborate pattern of ribs and cored out sections. The designers are managing sink marks and part rigidity simultaneously, playing those two requirements against each other on every feature. The newest development changing how all of this works is conformal cooling. Traditional injection molds use straight cooling water channels drilled through the steel. You drill a channel in one direction, intersect it with another, drilled at a right angle, plug the ends, connect to a water supply. The fundamental limitation is that straight drilled holes cannot follow the contours of a complex part surface. Some areas of the mold cavity end up far from any cooling channel, while others are close, which creates uneven cooling rates across the part, which drives differential shrinkage, which creates warpage that no amount of mold compensation can fully correct because it's fundamentally a process problem. Conformal cooling channels solve this by following the shape of the mold surface at a consistent distance all the way around, curving and branching in 3 dimensions through the steel. Until recently, there was no practical way to manufacture internal geometries that complex. The technology that made it possible is metal additive manufacturing, specifically laser powder bed fusion, a process where a laser selectively fuses metal powder layer by layer to build up a fully dense metal part with internal geometry that no drill could ever reach. Companies offering this for tooling applications started appearing commercially around 2015, and by 2026, it's increasingly standard for high-volume precision molds, where cycle time and dimensional consistency are primary concerns. The combination of CAE simulation, mold compensation, and conformal cooling through metal additive manufacturing represents genuinely the current state of the art. And yet, even with all of that, the physical behavior of molten plastic in a real mold is complex enough that even the best simulation doesn't predict it perfectly. The material property databases that Autodesk Moldflow and Moldex3D use are measured under controlled laboratory conditions, and production resins vary slightly from batch to batch. The presses have their own variability, cooling water temperature fluctuates with building conditions. So even after a mold has been designed with full CAE analysis and mold compensation built in, it's completely routine for the first production samples to need additional corrections. The simulation gets you close, sometimes very close, but physical validation and iterative correction is still part of how every serious mold gets finalized. The gap between what the simulation predicts and what the steel actually produces is where experienced mold makers still earn their living in 2026, just as they did in 1986. They look at the computer-aided engineering warpage map. They look at the actual part sitting on a CMM, a coordinate measuring machine, and they have a feel for where the model was optimistic, where the material behaved differently than its data sheet said it would. That combination of sophisticated simulation and accumulated physical intuition is how the plastic parts in your house end up flat when they're supposed to be flat, and curved exactly where they're supposed to be curved. So next time you snap a lid onto a container and it seats perfectly, or close a car door and the panel lines match up cleanly all the way along the edge, that's not an accident. Somewhere at some point, an engineer looked at a warpage map of a part that was going to distort the wrong way, built a mold that was intentionally wrong in the opposite direction, and trusted the math enough to cut steel. Usually it works, sometimes it takes 2 or 3 correction rounds, but it's one of those problems that looks simple until you're the one responsible for solving it. If you've ever noticed a plastic product that seems subtly off, a lid that rocks, a panel with a slight bow, drop it in the comments. There's a real chance you were looking at an imperfect mold compensation, and now you know exactly what happened. And if you want more of this kind of content, the actual engineering decisions behind products people use every day without thinking twice, subscribe.